If you're listening to bodybuilders, you probably think you need big calves for aesthetic legs. And if you low-key use some logic, you think big calves are the best for athleticism. But I'm here to tell you that big calves suck for both athletics and aesthetics. While small calves, they're incredible. You're probably thinking this is some random rant with no facts whatsoever, and I'm just coping because I have small calves. Like, very small calves. Well, you'd be wrong. As when I state that small calves are better for athletics and aesthetics, and that small calf people have won the genetic lottery, I use the truth and facts. I believe the calf is the most unique muscle in the human body. And I learned this pretty early on in my life. As growing up, I was a super active kid. I played all types of sports and I'm just as active today. Yet my calves have always been and still are pretty small. They're lean, sure, but they are small. My sport in high school was soccer, so I felt like my calf size made no sense. I swear half the people on my team had big calves while the other half of us had small calves. And the sizes were night and day difference. They weren't even close. But we were doing the same stuff every day, so it made no sense. Just like the fact you'll see fat dads who haven't done any strenuous physical activity in years with veiny, massive calves. Well, the reason this is because the calf is almost purely dependent on genetics. Yes, the size of every muscle in your body is dependent on genetics, that's no secret. Yet that doesn't explain how these fat dads I was talking about are pudgy and weak in every other muscle group. The reason that the calf is way more genetic than any other muscle group is because of the length of the Achilles tendon. The Achilles tendon is the longest tendon in the human body, and it connects the gastroc and the soleus muscles, the gastroc being the quote-unquote calf muscle, to the calcaneus bone or the heel bone. Take a look at NBA athlete Giannis Antetokounmpo's Achilles tendon and calf insertion point. Giannis's calf inserts or starts very high up on his lower leg. This is what's defined as a high calf insertion. People with high calf insertions will have smaller muscle bellies, and also will typically mean the person has smaller ankles, ultimately leading to that person having smaller calves to start out with, and even if they tried training it, they would have small calves in the future too. Specifically compared to someone with a low calf insertion, like football player Jack Grealish. His calf muscle starts very low on his leg or closer to the ankle. This typically leads to a larger calf muscle belly, and these people will also have larger ankles as well, leading to this person starting out with bigger calves, and their potential for growing their calves is also much greater. Jack Grealish has stated numerous times he doesn't use weights for his calves, and neither does Giannis. Both of their sports involve heavy usage of their calf. But why are their calf muscles so different? Yes, I get Grealish is like 5'7" and Giannis is like 7 foot. But you'll find short NBA players, or literally any other NBA player with the same calf insertion characteristics as Giannis. The variability in people's calf insertion point is the reason the calf muscle is so notorious for how hard it is to grow. My 1 rep max squat is over 2 times my body weight. I train like an athlete in the gym. I go to MMA multiple times a week, and I've been an athlete my whole life, yet my calves never grew, even when I believed that fitness matrix BS that big calves were aesthetic. However, there's a reason why I've never stayed consistent with my calf workouts when I actually had them programmed in. It's because I didn't really care that my calves were small. Best case scenario, let's just say that the calves, the bigger they are more aesthetic. Let's just make up this hypothetical scenario, which is the fattest lie I've ever told, but I'm just gonna use it to drill a point in. Your calves still do very little to your physique overall. Like when you look at Chris Bumstead, do you look at his calves? Never. You barely even look at them, if at all. But back to reality here, big calves make you look bulky and unathletic. But even worse, they make you look shorter.
Overrated men's muscles. Number 1, calves. I don't understand why you even focus on them. Large calves make you look short and stubby. I'm getting Napoleon complex vibes.
Girls like tall guys, that's no secret. So why try and look shorter? I'm 5'10". Here's me with UFC lightweight Mateusz Gamrot, if you don't believe me, who is listed at 5'10". And me with Joaquin Buckley, who's listed at 5'10" in the UFC, and I'm leaning against something. It's crazy how I have to justify my height because people legitimately think I'm like 5'4". In my MMA gym, there was actually someone who was taller than me, but it took me forever to notice because he had massive calves. I could have swore he was like 5'7". Why do that to yourself? Training calves from an aesthetic point of view is literally a waste of time. They are so hard to grow, they're so dependent on genetics, and they're an overactive muscle anyways, as everyone has tight calves. And the people who train calves never train their dorsiflexors or their shin muscles, which is like training your chest and not your back, which from an ankle health point of view is terrible. People typically do their calf workouts at the end of their leg day. But if you really care about your aesthetics, you're better not doing calves and skipping that and doing abs instead. A muscle group that's actually aesthetic. So now we know that big calves provide no advantage in terms of aesthetics and pulling chicks, but they also provide zero advantage for athletics and in sports. And I'd argue they actually provide a disadvantage. Whenever you're in the gym lifting weights, you're always generating peak force. And bigger muscles will help you generate more force, right? This has led a lot of people into believing that big calves will help people run faster and jump higher. If you're a fan of my channel, you probably think this is stupid, but the amount of people who actually believe this is astounding. However, I'm not gonna be a lazy bodybuilder and just tell these people they're wrong without explaining why they're wrong. Generating peak force typically takes between 500 milliseconds and 1,000 milliseconds, or half a second to a full second. While jumping and sprinting, you only have between 100 to 200 milliseconds to generate force, or in an extreme example, you say 200 to 300 milliseconds. And if you're smart, you notice that those time frames are nowhere near the amount of time you need to generate peak force. Take a look at this graph. The black line is a plyometrically trained athlete, and they are stronger than the powerlifter, or the purple line, during the first 200 milliseconds of a movement. This is because the plyometrically trained athlete has a higher rate of force development, which is more important in sports than peak force development. So you're probably asking, why exactly are big calves bad for sports? When achieving high rates of force development or performing athletic explosive movements, your force development is dependent on the series elastic component and the stretch shortening cycle. These employ stored energy for quick movements like sprinting and jumping through the stretch reflex. These allow your body to achieve a maximal use of muscle recruitment in a minimal amount of time, aka what your calf and most of your muscles do in sports, but specifically the calf. To explain to you why big calves don't help you much in sports, I'm gonna use a quote from this textbook. Of the mechanical model's many elements, it's the series elastic component that is the workhorse of plyometric exercise. Phrased simply, it's the workhorse for explosive movement. While the SEC includes some muscular components, it is the tendons that constitute a majority of the SEC, which means it's the stretch reflex or the spring-like qualities of your tendon, in this case being the Achilles tendon, that contribute most to the quick force development of running, jumping, and changing direction. So how do you get a springier tendon? Well, plyometric exercise is one way. John Morant isn't jumping high because he's spamming calf raises, but he's doing things like tire hops. I'm sure he's doing box jumps, things like that. That's the practical way of getting a springier tendon. The non-practical way, aka the thing you can't control to have a springier tendon, is to naturally be born with smaller calves or a higher calf insertion. A higher calf insertion provides better leverage to your body for explosive movements. Here's the explanation why. It's biomechanics, and I don't want to bore you with it. But the simple way for me to describe it is, think of a spring. The further you expand it, the higher it goes. If you have a higher calf insertion, you can extend your spring, in this case being your Achilles tendon, more. This is why almost all basketball players, a sport dependent on explosive movements, have tiny calves. Like literally almost all basketball players. This should just be enough evidence on why small calves are the way to go in sports. Keep in mind, although small calves have the edge in rate of force development, big calves have the edge in peak force development. But in sports, you almost never have enough time to generate peak force. That's why the best athletes in the world, like my buddy Leon Edwards, has small calves.
This is why Leon got the best physique in the world. Zoom down, look at the legs. That's why.
There are even pro-level coaches that use the concept of small calves, meaning a better athlete, to pick players for their team. Like college football coach Hugh Freeze, who will look at a player's ankle to determine if they are athletic.
First thing he does when he meets a player in person is he asks them to see their ankles.
Their ankles?
Mm-hmm. When he was recruiting our players, he wanted to see their ankles. I saw it live and in person multiple times. He says that that has never failed him. A player, you can tell how athletic a player is by how skinny their ankles are. He said, Brittany, it's never failed me. If a player has skinny ankles, they're super athletic, and I need athletic guys on my team.
Like when I say small calves are more athletic, it's no joke. This doesn't mean you can't be athletic or explosive if you have big calves. And because I get this question all the time, no, there's no way to shrink your calves, and that's not the answer either. The answer is doing plyometric exercises to improve your rate of force development, aka your explosiveness. And I made an entire video on it, although it's titled and geared toward kicking and punching faster and harder. It is truly about using plyometrics to become a more explosive athlete, and I highly recommend you go check out that video right now.